trying here.
Awesome.
Here we
go. Okay. So you really want to know, huh? Fine. I'm going to start by telling you this. And this is important, so listen up. Your entire life, this one and many others, you've been a god who uses its absolute power to make yourself powerless. Entire cultures, especially this one, have all been afraid of their weaknesses, supposedly. When in reality, they've all been afraid of their power. This goes beyond the matrix of reality. This is something much deeper than that. This is eternal. This is fully realizing your consciousness. This is infinite. This is evolution. This is our divine right.
All right, everybody, welcome to the show. I'm so excited. Today we have an amazing guest. And just before we get into it, I do have a couple things I want to share with you. Our guest today is none other than Jim Gale of Food Forest Abundance. And I'm so excited to get into this chat. It's going to be awesome. The energy is already absolutely off the charts. So I can only imagine what is going to happen today. But just before we get started, I want to let you know about my latest offer. It's in the description there. I'm hosting a book club. This book was super transformational for me. It really connected a lot of the dots, and I recently started reading it again. So if you go to this page, the end game is a call with me, which, there's another link for that too. Feel free to reach out, but we'll talk about it and answer any questions as well in that little video right there. I also want to thank Content Safe very much for distributing this content all over the internet for me, so I don't have to sit here and upload for 45 hours after doing a 1 hour awesome interview. So I have today the one and only Jim Gale. We're already hitting it off, and we've only spoken a few words together, but but this it's just good energy. And this clip here, I have a link that goes right to the About Us, and there's all these links as well. I'll add some more links in here after the live stream, but all the links to follow her up here. But this interview was great that you did. It's really quick and snappy, and it really covers a lot. So I went ahead and put that into the show notes for everybody so that they can go ahead and check that out. And I just want to welcome you, Jim. Thank you so very much for coming on my show today.
Thank you, Owen. Man, listening to your intro about how powerful we are, man, that's all you need to know. Like, that's it. That's all. All we need to know is that we are God. We are spirit. We are part of this divine natural creation. And the people, the energies, the entities, the vibrational reality that's trying to suck us out of it, right, is all we have to do to live the life that your intro alluded to. Is simply rise above the fear. And once we do that, we literally have the next, I don't know if it's going to be a few hundred years, but definitely it's going to be a long time of radical joy and abundance and manifestation on every level on this plane.
Man, I love it. It's funny because I can see myself a few years ago seeing everything and listening to, media or other people's ideas or whatever, and being very discouraged. And even in a couple of years ago when everything started happening with, the lockdowns and all this kind of stuff, I was very discouraged. But I think it's been more than anything else, a catalyst and a catapult for us to start working together, connecting, and reaching out to people. The people that I work with now are people that I share values with, whereas before, they were just people that would give me money. And I cannot tell you the difference that made.
Dude, what you just said has been the biggest shift and one of my most valuable learnings of all fucking time in my life, right? And here's exactly what happened. So about 9 months ago, we were doing these food forests here in Florida, and we pulled up to this customer's house. And I had some funny feelings. I had an intuition about this, but I'm like, okay, well, they want a big food forest. And I just cared about getting food in the ground. Like my thing is helping people live this self-reliant, free lifestyle, low maintenance and abundance, right? So we showed up and the guy was standing he was standing behind a car and he said, don't come any closer. I didn't have a mask on, right? Which I'd never do, ever. Like I had to freaking wear a mask on an airplane one time for a couple minutes because the lady was going to kick me off the airplane and I wanted to get home to see my family. Anyway,
sure.
There are
judgment.
reasons.
Hey, I've worn them too. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So these people, they said, stay back. And then we started getting into the process of designing and installing their food forest. And the whole time I knew these people were sick. They were stormtroopers. They were, the people in the Matrix who turn into that guy that kills everybody, right?
The agent. Yeah, the agent.
Agent Smith or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, we're doing good work. We're getting food in the ground. And guess what? They negotiated hard. We gave them the best deal in the world. They said they were going to market. From that experience, I have made a business decision that has been the best business decision I've ever made. I do not work with anybody who advocates for force and violence. And when I say that, and I literally, if I have a funny feeling, it's one of the first things I ask people. And I tell people, I share with them. I say, hey, by the way, I just want you to know I don't work with anybody who advocates force and violence. And everybody says, well, I don't advocate force and violence. And I say, well, that means forced mandates of any kind. Anytime you're trying to force me to do something out of fear for yourself, that's force and violence. 1 out of 15 people hang up and I'm free. And it's never been so good for me in business.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I was listening to someone who I look up to very much talk about like still doing long form content and doing these types of things because he's like, dude, I don't need 1 million views on TikTok. I don't want that crowd that's like just here for the juice. You know what I mean? Like I want qualified people that want to work with me. Yeah. So, this is a great way to divide, qualified leads from non-qualified leads, to put it in that business way. But man, you have such an amazing story. And I just love hearing about the successes that you had and what you were able to do before you got into what you're doing now, which is truly your passion. And I would love it if you would share just a little bit of background for my audience, because this is something that I just think is such a beautiful lesson.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm going to share it in terms of the failures because like when you win, you party, when you lose, you ponder. Well, I've had a lot of partying and a lot of pondering. And it's the pondering that led me to here. Like I look back on my story from a place where, put it this way, I wouldn't change a thing. There's not, unless I could change a thing and still have learned the lesson and have 50 million or $100 million in the bank, then I would change it. But that's not how it freaking works, right? So I'm just going to love those experiences of massive radical failure. And the first one happened, I didn't know about goals or any type of future predictions or future pacing at the time. And I lost the big tournament. I had beat this guy, Jerry Martin, who I respected. I beat him 5 times in a row in wrestling. And then the 6th time we wrestled was the state championship. And I was a shoo-in to win because I've already beat him 5 times. I didn't win, right? The next 2 years were the worst 2 years of my life. I didn't even place the next year, my senior year. Then I went to the U and it was a horrible year. And then, and this is the big one, my coach, Dr. Gary Rushing, said to the whole team, everybody write your goals, right? So I looked at this piece of paper and I said, shit, I don't like pen and paper. Like I only got enough. I got like I ended up with a 2.8 in high school, which I didn't do any and it was because I got A's in gym and A's in physics and science, and everything else was like C, just so I could wrestle. Anyway, I started writing my goals on a Sunday night after a hard weekend of partying, and the person who showed up at the wrestling room on Monday morning and the person who left on Friday afternoon were completely different energies, completely different people, because I started dreaming about myself in the future. And this is what everybody can do starting immediately is start creating a vision for yourself that you can conceive and believe in the future, and let that draw you forward.
I love it. No, that's great. You know what's so funny that you just said, because, okay, so I can't help but hate on it a little bit, right? Because it's a little cheesy, right? People are doing the vision board. This afternoon, I tried to do it last week, and I didn't finish it. I'm actually doing it because of a book that I'm reading that's not really even in the spirit. It's called The Artist's Way. It's Julia Cameron's thing. It's a great book, but she talks about it in there even. So I have never made a vision board before, but I just did my first one. And what's funny about it is people will make fun of a vision board. They'll be like, ha ha ha, you're making a vision board, and then they go home and they have one.
Yeah, exactly. Some people have vision boards. They don't even call it a vision board. They just have all these goals of themselves. That's a vision board. If a vision can turn into a feeling, right? Because feelings are the gateway to change, right? We can't suppress the feeling. In fact, there's a book called Molecules of Emotion by, I think it was Candace Pert, an MIT genius. And she was the first one to actually study and show that emotions can get stored in the tissues of the body, right? And imagine where if you got a tightness in your body and it's tight over time, you might start with a tightness for a couple of days, no big deal. You get lactic acid buildup, you get some destruction, some tearing, but it subsides over time. Well, some people have these tightnesses, and that literally turns into disease, and then it turns into disease, and then it turns into death, right? And it's like God's way or source's way of saying, hey, pay attention here. And it'll get more insane and intense until you either pay attention or die, right? So let's pay attention. And so anyway, going deep and meditating and just silencing the mind and going into what is the vision that I can conceive and believe for my future, that will change. If everybody just did that one thing, the world would be full of joy and love immediately.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And you really are doing such an interesting and cool job of really bringing that energy out in nature and being a part of that. Let's talk a little bit about permaculture. Cool. Just for anybody who doesn't know what that is, maybe talk a little bit about permaculture, how you got into that, and what you do with food forests.
I love it. So permaculture is an agricultural design science, and it originally stood for permanent agriculture, which permanent simply means like a food forest. When you design and install a food forest, mimicking nature. So you're basically just making a natural system that produces a lot of yield for whatever kind of yield you want to produce it for. You want to produce for humans, like what do you like to eat and stuff, and flowers and butterflies and bee and systems. So when you design and install a food forest, it becomes a permanent, expansive structure, right? Where these monocultures that are all over the world right now, they're impermanent and destructive. We are mining our soil at a rate that's 10 to 40 times the rate of replenishment, and we are destroying the shit out of it. Now, the UN, which is a criminal organization, and the permaculturalists around the world and the farmers are saying the same thing. We're depleting our topsoil at a rate that is radically destructive and unsustainable. All unsustainable systems die and fail. And therefore, what are we going to do? They said we have 60 years left. That's 2 generations. That's my grandkids. That's all that is just my grandkids' lives, right? So if that were the only reason to instead design and install permanent agriculture, that would be a good enough reason.
Dude, absolutely it would. And I love the idea of it. I mean, it just takes you back to, like, I don't know, it kind of pulls the veil away from a lot of things, like why we do things the way we do, and why we, live in this kind of ridiculous, we've only been in this industrial age for 100 years. I try to keep that in context. Yeah. It's not a lot, just over 120 years now. That's really nothing in the span of however long history and prehistory is or may even be, and some of the other wild stuff that people have been exploring lately. I don't even know.
Right. Like evil, good and evil. Like, what the hell's going on? There's some crazy shit going on.
But I think it's genius and beautiful too, that the answers are, some of the solutions are so close. And permaculture is something that I've bought one book on. I used to be a tree farmer for a little while, and that was not really what I had hoped.
Right.
We did ornamentals, maples and stuff like that. Big tree spade, dig it up, put it on a tractor trailer, get it out of there. Yeah. I'd be like on my hands and knees, like, patting soil around a tree, and my boss would just be standing over me like, what the hell are you doing, man? Right. If I heard less talking, more shoveling once, I probably heard it.
Oh God, yes. It's work, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be fun. What are you doing? What's the matter with you? How could you be playing right now? And my mind was like, we're gonna sip Arnold Palmer's and look at the pretty leaves change. Well, no. It was more like swashbuckling on the back of a semi trailer and jumping in a cat and spraying Roundup. So it's definitely not the same type of experience you're having with nature. That's really what industrial farming has become. I have family too in South Georgia, and it is that monoculture cotton fields. So let's talk a little bit about some of the differences between these philosophies or systems.
Let's go for it, right? Okay, so I like looking at it from every perspective, because my job is to be as effective of a communicator, of an inspirer as I can possibly be, of an encourager, to help people get courage and be inspired and enthusiastic about these systems that have been proven and demonstrated all over the world, right? I am not the idea creator. In fact, this idea, one of my favorite, most relevant quotes of the day, "There's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world," said Victor Hugo a long time ago, and that is an idea whose time has come. Now let's unpack that. All the armies of the world are controlled by whom? They're controlled by an entity that's it's literally fucking called mind control. Yeah. Govern is to manage and control, and mente is mind.
Right.
So if mind control is the problem that creates the wars and the lobbyists and, big pharma and the military industrial complex and all these different things, what's the opposite of having your mind controlled, right? It's enlightenment. It's simply not having your mind controlled. It's simply not believing in the most dangerous superstition, as Larkin Rose wrote about so eloquently, this idea in authority, that there needs to be an author of my life. I'm going to be my own fucking author. I don't need an author telling me how to live my life. I don't need somebody telling me not to kill my freaking neighbor. I don't want to kill my neighbor. I want to love. And that's what everybody wants, unless they're psychopaths. Unless they're so down and so low vibration that they literally want death and destruction. And when I first heard that 10 years ago, my buddy Brian, wise guy, he's a direct descendant of Wild Bill Hickok. And anyway, so he's an outside the box thinker by his very, history. He said, "Jim, these people want destruction." And I'm like, no, they don't. They don't really want people to die. I couldn't wrap my head around this idea that there's some people that actually want destruction. And then over the years, I'm looking at the history of these people and seeing that it is the poisons and the poison producers and the poison mandators that have really taken this idea, whose time has come, of the Garden of Eden or of food forest everywhere, and have destroyed it. It's amazing. But the good news is the solutions are embarrassingly simple. And that's what we're going to lay out.
I love that. See, So, I got into this. I love Larkin Rose, by the way. I have to say, like, not only the Most Dangerous Superstition, but the narrative book that he wrote also. Oh yeah. Nice.
What
the narrative, I think it was called The Iron Web.
Yeah.
That one was great, man. I think it would have made a great screenplay, but ain't nobody producing that for Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just not
soon. They will soon.
I like that. I like that spirit. But yeah, let's talk about the solution. I love that. When I got onto all this stuff, maybe 8 or 9 years ago or whatever, I was seeing, oh my God, this is a huge problem. Oh my God, because think about the authority. And I like what you said there about being the author of your life. It's our birthright to be the author, writer, director, and producer of our own life. And so, we want to go that route and collectively. So, but yeah, let's talk about the solutions aspect and how embarrassingly simple it is. I love that.
Mind-bogglingly logical, right? So this idea whose time has come, that statement implies that the idea already exists, right? It doesn't say a new idea. It says the idea whose time has come. So then it begs the question, what is the idea? And then you look back on history, and I love puzzles. I love putting clues together. And that's my part in this whole thing, is to put the puzzle together and then communicate the puzzle to as many people as I possibly can, which is now global. And that is this idea of abundance everywhere, of the Garden of Eden, not the religious place, but the logical place, the spiritual place, the place of abundance and growth rather than scarcity and death and fear, right? Fear is the contraction of the spirit. Right? Faith and courage are the expansion of the spirit. It's a vibrational thing. Dr. David Hawken wrote about it in Power versus Force so well. So then the next step is just looking at the most logical thing, is taking our landscapes and looking at the ornamental plants that are everywhere that do not support life. Once in a while they have flowers, but very rarely do they have any type of food yield. Right? When you simply take that exact same energy input. So instead of planting a certain type of ornamental, you plant a berry bush that looks as good or better, that has flowers for part of the year, and that produces a food yield. And now when you scale that out and you have all the ornamentals being functional as well as just, which beauty is a function, right? So that's a very important function. But let's also add the food production, and literally using the same resources that we are currently using, we would reverse mass extinction. We would reverse deforestation and cancer and heart disease and diabetes. All of these, by the way, are forms of tyranny that are propagated by the evil psychopathic governmentes around the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I mean, there's definitely a conflict, but I love, and I've heard this, this is from one of my favorite books, like every complicated problem has a simple solution.
Yeah.
And I love the idea that it is embarrassingly simple. And this conflict, it's gonna happen, or this contrast might be a softer way to put it, right? Yeah. It's gonna happen. I don't think, not to be like, oh, well, I don't like this like justification of treating people wrong, like,
right.
or like what I would consider evil to be is like abusing people's sovereignty, right? Like stepping over that line between like letting me be my author, writer, producer, director of my life and all the rest of the other people, right? We respect that about each other. We're all good. But there does have to be some conflict, I guess. It's like the Star Wars movie, where it's like balance to the force, which is kind of a weird thing to say and think about. But
I get that though.
Yeah, I do too. It's interesting, but
you can't make babies without friction.
Right. Exactly. Friction's good. That's another word. That's like Buddha talking about like suffering, right? Like or that conflict. We see that element in nature. It is something that I think we can learn a lot about, and also, learn to embrace like these things too. And if the solution to our foods, which if you look at it through one angle, the way that we've done farming practices and destruction, just absolute destruction of the soil and the country, all the grasslands are just gone. Like Joel Salatin was somebody that I read a couple of his books, and I loved what he had to say about restoring the soil. But the fact that, the fact that we could get it back so quickly with just planting different kinds of vegetables and creating living gardens, let's talk about like how does it, when you design a living garden for somebody's house, what's that process like? How does that work?
It's so great. So we've got designers now all over the world. We launched 7 months ago, and we're taking on designers. In fact, if anybody out there is a permaculture certified designer, then talk to us, because we are literally expanding at an exponential rate. So it starts with this: a customer is inspired to grow food instead of lawns, or along with lawns. Like most of our customers, they'll turn like 50% of their lawn into a food forest. I might have a little bit of lawn. I'm not against lawns. I'm against imbalance. I'm for is a better word. You can't be against. I'm for balance and abundance. So it starts with, what does the customer want? What's the customer's goal? And then the first thing we look at is the agricultural zone, right? So I live in Florida by design, by intention. I live here because it's a really good growing area. Central Florida, we've got over 100 different species of edible, medicinal, and support plants in the ground at Gulf's Landing, and we'll have over 1,000 different species within 2 to 3 years. Right. But here's the cool part: is my buddy up in northern Minnesota, Chad Johnson, off the tip of Lake Superior, he's got 300 different species in his food forest. And here's the magic of it: when you design it, install it right, it'll capture and it'll store energy of all kinds, water being a key element. Right. So you create these systems where you get little ditches on contour. The water comes in, it starts running down the land. And normally it just takes that topsoil and the nutrients and everything, and it just basically cleans the land. Well, that's not what you want if you want to have nutrient density in your land. So you put a little ditch on contour. It could be this wide, or it could be, 10 feet wide or 20 feet. It just matters on what your land looks like. Put a little swale there. The water will hit that and it'll slow down, and then it'll sink. And it'll leave all that nutrient density in that swale. And then everything downgrade from that has its own water source and its own nutrient source from those swales. So that's just one element of permaculture, but it's one of the key elements is catch and store water and energy. And then use that according to what your goals are to create the biggest yield. So our designers will do these designs. Every one of them is custom based on the zone, the customer desires, and then what's possible. And that's where it gets really fun.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, what a dream, like this is really a beautiful example of a mix of co-creation with nature. I mean, I can't think of a better example. I used to be a raft guide, so I love being out. I was an adventure instructor, and I taught outdoor education with kids for years. So I love being outside, and I love all that. But I hated my experience on the tree farm. And I, as soon, when things start happening, I start looking through, at farming through that lens, but it doesn't have to be that way. I love that, what is the upkeep like for, in general, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is so Chad's upkeep, if he left his farm, and I'll talk about the Minnesota version and my Florida version, so you can have two different perspectives, because what my duty is to my posterity, to our grandkids, is to blow the BS away. The belief systems, the bad science, and the bullshit, the programming that gets people to say, I've got a black thumb or a brown thumb, or I don't know how to grow food. I don't have the time, the space, or the money. Well, most of that is complete bullshit. So my buddy Chad's, his food forest, by its very nature, because a food forest is a regenerative, expansive system. So he could leave that, he could move somewhere else, and that land, but already, because of the animals, the birds and the animals and the wind coming through and the water coming through the system, it's planting. He estimates tens of thousands of plants have been planted in the forest around his property, thanks to what he created and designed there. So think about that. That's mind-boggling. Like there's an olive tree on the Greek Isle of Crete that's been producing olives for over 2,000 years. Who maintains it? Nobody. Nature.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. Say, well, how do you maintain a food forest? Now, if you want it to look like landscaping, then you got to do the same amount of maintenance you do to your current landscaping. And then some people talk about harvesting as maintenance. Hell no. I mean, unless you're going to compare the fact that normally when you harvest, you have to work, you have to earn money, then you have to drive to the store and harvest nutrient deficient foods and pay for them, and then bring them to your home. So Chad's food forest is rocking. Now I'll share a little bit about the two systems I have here. One is a complete food jungle. We installed it 18 months ago, and literally the first 4 months, because we we didn't have a water source to it. We had to water. It took about an hour a week when it didn't rain. When it rained, then we're good. When it didn't rain, we had to pour some water right on the root balls. For the last 14 months, we've done zero maintenance, except for one thing. We had to take a weed whacker and weed whack a trail through the middle of it because it was a dense jungle of food. And there's about 55 different species of edibles in there. I mean, avocados and lychees and I mean, olives and coffee and sugarcane and bananas and yucca and passion flower and longevity spinach and sweet potatoes. And it's stacked, right? So under the ground, you've got your roots and tubers, turmeric and ginger and sweet potatoes. And then on the ground, we got the mushrooms and the herbaceous layer and longevity spinach and Okinawa spinach. And then above that, you've got the shorter shrubs. We've got a bunch of wild blueberries and raspberries and elderberries. And then up taller than that, we've got some of our bigger fruit trees, the mangoes and the moringas and all the different Brazilian cherries and so on. So it's layers of food, zero maintenance.
Man, that is so cool. It sounds too good to be true, right? Like, because it irritates me so much, even just doing like lawn mowing or whatever, Yeah. And I've always thought you guys are wasting your time. My neighbors, I'm sure they hate me because I will let mine get a little shaggy, I try to be respectful, because I mean, I know I live in a neighborhood and people don't want it to look, super ratty or anything. But I also look out there on a Saturday when I'm doing whatever the hell I want. And these guys are out there working so hard in their yard, putting mulch and all this stuff. And I mean, I know I think intuitively all know that the natural processes are enough and that, a lot of what we have added to our to-do list is completely created by our own ego,
It's exactly, it's based in this scarcity mind, this ignorance. And by the way, I've been ignorant and I'm still very ignorant in so many different fields and ways. This is one thing that I've been obsessed with. And lately, and this is a big transition, I've changed that obsession intentionally and strategically to a joyful obsession. And when we add that word joyful, because obsession kind of connotes this idea of struggle and effort, and that always comes from fear, right? And I was scared. I was losing $20 million. I had all these crazy things happening in my life because I was trying to hold on. And as soon as I let go of that shit, which really started about 2 years ago, when the beginning of COVID hit, I had a new business started. We were rocking. We had a booth in a mall that was a living booth. And we were teaching permaculture and all this. And everybody said it was the coolest because it was alive with so much life. Anyway, the mall shut down and we were done, right? And that was the best thing that ever happened. I knew it and I knew it. And that's when I let go of the fear. And I said, I'm gonna try this for a while. I'm going to actually live with complete faith. I'm not going to think about or worry about or anything. I had to bust some habits because I had some habits of worrying and concerning and efforting. And those habits are probably still there to some degree, but for the most part, those habits are gone. And now it's magic everywhere.
Man, it's awesome. It's great to think about that too. I think about this a lot, and it's not about obviously pretending or ignoring or repressing anything. Right. It's like we acknowledge the reality that is, but we don't have to, bite on the emotional. It happens to me. I'll just be walking around. I'm like, God, my butthole is really tight right now. Yeah. What is going on? I gotta take a deep breath. We can do whatever it is that we're doing and have fun with it. It doesn't have to be a chore. Right. It can be like, if I'm uploading stuff, I don't have to be like, like there's this almost like nagging, like weird push that is like taunting me almost, and that doesn't have to be there. No. If there's a problem that needs to be addressed, then obviously we're going to make a better decision by being in a calmer state, in a better vibration. We're going to see from a higher perspective, knowing, hey, this is just this moment. There's going to be there's a whole lot down the road, there's a whole future here. So I try to make the best decision I can, choice in this moment, calmly, actively, and try to find, hopefully that simple solution to that problem rises up and we can take a little bit of a deep breath. But I love to hear this story of, what you said. You kind of started off talking about wrestling and how that went, but like, coming out from failure and being prompted to sort of adjust your trajectory, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and you said several things that were so important to really flesh out and unpack, like this idea of solving a problem from a state of stress or fear. Well, you're just not going to solve that problem from that vibrational energy. You might you might be able to change your tire in a state of stress. Yes, but you're not going to solve a problem that takes creativity, because creativity cannot happen when we're focused in a stressful way. Right. So my foundation of everything now is allowing my mind to chill out. Allowing my mind, the word meditation has a bunch of energies for different people. Meditation for me is I'm completely connected right now to source. Completely. I can feel my hands now. I couldn't feel them 10 seconds ago, but I can feel them. Like I feel this fucking incredible energy. I can feel my stomach. I just had a big, awesome meal and I can feel my stomach is full, and I couldn't feel that before, right? But how many people live their whole life in that state where they don't feel their bodies?
Yeah, they don't feel anything. I've been there. I've been in that place where I wasn't aware. I say that I caught glimpses, trying to be an artist or a musician going through college and stuff, but really probably till I hit Saturn's return, I don't really feel like I was, and maybe I'm still not, right, but fully conscious. Like I didn't really understand the thought that I was thinking, I couldn't step back and be an observer because I didn't even know it was possible. It was like there's this constant fridge hum noise that was on in the background all the time that I never even noticed.
Yeah, totally. Until you did. And then all of a sudden it becomes a new foundation, a new level. And it's endless. Like you read the stories, and I've read the great Avatar stories, living with the Himalayan master, Swami Rama, all of these. I went and done all these different classes around the world where I talk to these people and meet them, where they've made a life out of going deep. I've had 7 ayahuasca ceremonies, which I advocate so deeply for people. And I've seen the 100 and some people that have been with me in these different times, usually 15 people, 20 people. And they were all of them had, except for a couple of guys who went into it stoned and said, I didn't really feel nothing. I'm like, oh, I feel bad for you, whatever. All the rest of them said they were glad they did it. And most of them said it was a life-changing experience for the better. And several of them were majorly addicted to heroin and coke and PTSD and these things. No more. They said, I'm done with it. I don't want that stuff right now. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it is amazing. Yeah, I've heard some stories about iboga too, and other entheogens, and I mean, to each their own. Obviously, no medical advice here in the show between Jim and I. But, but hey, you pursue your enlightenment however you choose. And I personally, I don't think I would be the same person. I could even go back, as odd as this might be to say, but I could even go back to like smoking pot. For me, as being like a way to. That something happened in my mind where I was like, well, I wonder, I wonder about this, or I wonder about that, and not to say like that wasn't responsible for my wake up or whatever. Like I said, I do think there was a time where I maybe saw through the cracks every once in a while, but it really wasn't until, I don't know what the real catalyst was, because it certainly wasn't drug induced, but it was information, certain information. And right around the time when I started reading like Larkin Rose and understanding voluntarist principles and what morality is and what individuality is and what sovereignty is and how important those things are. Because I think that's what's so great about this time is all of us are coming together, and we've been, some people have been barking over here and over here, and over, but we've all been, understanding a lot of the same principles, and they're starting to kind of fold together these communities. It's beautiful.
That's so beautiful. I love this. There's so many people sharing the truth from their perspective. And then when you put that all together, it's an amazing time. I mean, this is we get to witness, and not only witness, but also direct the apocalypse, the unveiling, You've heard of the white hats, maybe this supposedly group of people that are there to protect us. Oh, bullshit. We're the white hats. You're the white hats. There's nobody going to protect and save our ass. We got to save our own ass, right? And don't we want it to be that way?
Of course. Yeah, of course. And I've made this example before, but I mean, just because I admire him so much, I heard G. Edward Griffin talking. This is what knocked me out of my stupor after everything happened. He was on Ricky Veranda's podcast where he has a big panel, Union of the Unwanted. And he said, man, I'm so grateful that I get to see this because I never thought I would see it in my lifetime. And this is truly the catalyst that we need to start creating our own systems. And I was like, there it is. There it is. And that's exactly what has really started to unfold, through maybe some unlikely networks, but podcasting and, Telegram groups. And, I don't know. I have a lot of friends who also have come from different angles too. And they've shared with me things that I wasn't aware of and vice versa, but we're all kind of meeting in the middle, it seems like.
Yes, we're meeting for one goal is to lift everybody up, to help. We're just laughing about this morning. We're designing, I'm building an off-grid community in Galt's Landing after John Galt from Atlas Shrugged, right? About the power of the individual.
That's pretty cool.
This freaking place is like, I don't even know if it existed before I started imagining it because it's just too perfect. We actually went out to the real estate network and stuff around here and we said, hey, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a piece of land on a lake with a runway or the ability to build a runway. Say, well, first of all, you can't build a runway anywhere around here because of the blah, 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 government rules. And they said, it's impossible. There's nothing like that. Got a call 2 weeks later. Jim, you wouldn't believe it. We just found 52 acres on a private 430 acre lake where we have the only dock. I'm a fisherman. This is like magic. And then on the east, there's a mile-long paved runway. So we don't own the runway yet, but my partner is a pilot. So we're taking this completely off-grid. Everything's off-grid. Our first house is almost done. And we're going to have all of our own food, all of our own water, all of our own energy. And we're building a studio. In fact, just this morning, I was there with the camper and the first container was delivered. And we're doing a studio setup. So we're going to film and document what freedom looks like from inside the system.
Man, that's so cool. Man, New Earth version 1. Dude, that is so freaking cool. That is amazing. It doesn't surprise me, but I love hearing it, it's so cool. Yes. Well, can we talk a little bit about cause you're in Florida. I actually have family too in Central Florida. But what about people who are in, let's say, Nebraska or the desert? How can they also participate in food forests?
Everybody can. So in every ag zone in the world, we even did the polar ice caps. We had, just for fun, we said, what can you grow there? There's 3 things, right? And so don't live there. But everywhere freaking else, you can grow a lot of food, and it's way more. In fact, I'm so just proud of this team that is working together now to create these systems that are unique in some ways. They fill in the gaps that permaculture has everything. It's just a matter of putting the pieces together in a way that gets to the masses. My job is to inspire and to catalyze a shift in consciousness that leads to mass adoption of the most logical thing we could do for selfish reasons. And that's turn our yards into production systems, right? So everywhere it can be done. It's a matter of designing and following the principles that Bill Mollison and Jeff Lawton and David Holmgren and all these, my heroes, all of them have already created this. Now it's just a matter of putting it to use.
So now it's just a matter of taking the models that they've created and implementing them, that doesn't actually sound that hard. The hard work is done. This is just a matter. And so I imagine it. So you're talking about all these different types of plants and stuff that you guys are growing. There's probably, how does it work from a fundamental, and then you build up your sort of food forest? So do you have a specific type of plant that's kind of this hardy plant that is the foundation of the forest, or I don't know.
No, that's cool. So we have types. There's different categories of things. You've got your food producers that their primary thing is let's produce food, but they also have other functions. Some of them also become beneficial insect attractors. Like, so you're going to want your food producers, you're going to want your flowering plants that flower as much of the year as possible, because they feed the bees and the butterflies and the pollinators that then help fertilize all of your other flowers so you can have fruit. And then you're going to want your nitrogen fixers and your chop and drops, your green manure plants. Like we've got moringa all over the place here. And moringa, the tree of life, the miracle tree, more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, more protein than eggs, more vitamin A, more vitamin C. I mean, it's insane. So, and people say, how can a moringa have this? Well, the taproots go way down and they search out these minerals, and then they bring the minerals up through their system, and then their leaves come out. And then when they drop their leaves build and add nutrients to the soil. Right? Wow. So when you put these plants together in the same system in a community, what's called a guild or a community, and I'll give an example. Like, let's say you have enough room for one tree, right? Let's call it a peach tree, one of the most common. So you've got a peach tree. Now, instead of just having one peach tree, which you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot in most places, you can buy a peach tree, you can put it in the ground, and you're probably going to be fine. You're probably going to get some peaches. Now, if you add some nitrogen fixers around the base of that to fix nitrogen in the soil, legumes, beans, and peas, and you add some beneficial insect attractors, then you add maybe some roots and tubers and some mushrooms. You can put some mushrooms in some wood mulch and have incredible healthy stuff. And now you've got a few berry bushes. Now in the same exact area, you can have 10, 12, 15 different types of food growing at the same time.
Wow. That is so cool. That is so cool. I love it. Yeah. And it makes so much sense too. I mean, imagine what the world could look like, my little place where I live here, we call it Normal Town, because there used to be what they used to call, I guess, a normal school down the street, which is like an all girls school, I guess. Okay. I don't know, in the 50s. Yeah. So it's like this nuclear neighborhood, all these things. And I walk down and it's a really pretty cute neighborhood, but I can only imagine what it would look like if there were literally just peach trees, because we grow a lot of peaches here in Georgia. Yeah. If there were peach trees and, like all kinds of vegetation instead of just, and I love the ornamentals, they're pretty, but I think it would be a lot more efficient. There would be a lot less hungry people too. You could just walk down the street and grab an apple and
yes, it's the way it should be if the powers that be did not want to control. And Henry Kissinger said 50 years ago, he said, if you want to control nations, control oil. If you want to control people, control food. If you want to control the world's currency. Well, the food part is something that we can all affect, right? So this isn't the ramblings of a psychopath. This is the strategy of a psychopath. Mm-hmm. And he had met with every single president. Why? Why would some guy meet with every president? That only makes sense if you know what's going on behind the scenes, and that the presidents don't run the world. The people who employ the presidents run them, and through them, they run the world.
Well, this interesting, like, sort of conflict or contrast that we see, it just goes back to that. It's like, look at all these people. It's laughable, really, because look at all these people who are trying to outsmart the ineffable. You know what I mean? Like, good luck, bruh. But they are. And it takes them years of strategizing and boardrooms and flying across the country and Bilderberg meetings or whatever, and all this stuff. And they're doing all this stuff. It's so funny because they're trying to, subvert the most subversive force in the universe. Reality is alive. It's living, like we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah. It's this crazy intent to dominate, this desire to control shit. And the best thing about life is allowing the miraculous. Gosh, I have no structure to my days. I have meetings and I have structure, like we had to be here at 3. Great. But in general, I don't have any structure, and I love the flow of it that way. I want to be surprised and blown away. And I expect to be, by the way. And that's when it's got really, dude, what's happened in the last 7 months, I think on several different levels, it's never happened before, which I can share some of those details. It's wild.
No, I would love to hear about that. I love hearing that. It's so confirming for me, because I've changed the way that I really interact and interface in my life too. It's like, as a coach or whatever, so many people have these strategies where they're posting, and I just don't do any of it.
Yeah.
Like I go completely off of intuition,
Yeah.
right or wrong, who knows?
Totally.
I don't, it doesn't matter to me, because the whole exercise for me is to strengthen my intuitive ability to hear. And so, instead of, I'll wake up and I'll like read a passage or and maybe do morning pages and stuff like that. And I, of course, too, like I keep my afternoons open where I can do a podcast, or I have people calling or clients or what have you, and I do that. But for the most part, I do try to keep things open, and I do notice really amazing things happen. And I've had the opportunity to do some things lately that blew me away. And honestly, some of what I've been able to do, ultimately, it is stemmed from shifting my view of the universe or God, or however you want to quantify that, because there were things that I believed subconsciously about that force and blamed things on that I was doing. It had nothing to do with universal consciousness. Universal consciousness, like, do whatever you want. I love you.
Exactly.
And I'm like, no, but I can't do that unless I do this. And they're like, if you wish, you go for it, because malleability is the most consistent quality of reality. Whatever we believe about that form is kind of what it takes. It's bizarre, but
it's the foundation of, and it's very demonstratable. And it's also very logical. Like, you think of the law of attraction, right? When you have a thought, the next thought is going to be similar, unless you purposely do a pattern interrupt of thoughts, right? But if you don't, then you're going to flow at whatever kind of programming you're thinking about. But when you can meditate, take some deep breaths, and go in and listen to the hum and feel the vibration, all of a sudden, then that's when the magic has been happening for me. So 9 months ago, or 10 months ago, I knew that Bitchute was coming to visit. So I wrote a speech. My goal was to get up on that stage and actually give a speech as one of the speakers, but I didn't have a stage spot, and I showed up and they're like, oh, what are you talking about? You can't, no, but I did go to Dell and I said, hey, this is a speech I wrote. He read it and he said, oh my God, I'm going to give you a call. Called me. A couple months later, Earth Day, we launched the show on the High Wire, Creating Abundance in Your Backyard. And since then, we had 3 people on the team then. Now we're over 200 people around the world. We're in 15 countries and over 40 states. We've got our new COO was in charge of the largest commercial product in the history of the world. Like he managed $130 billion under management. He's now our COO because it just makes sense. Like, this is changing the world fast.
Wow.
We have just finished a pilot TV show with Adrian from Entourage, and it's, did I send you that? I'll send you that.
Please do. I'll put it in the notes of the show too, for everybody.
Cool.
If it's something that's shareable publicly, I'll share it.
Cool. I'll send it to you. And then probably in about 2-3 weeks, it'll be publicly shareable.
Cool.
But it's a pilot. And this is magic. So the producer of The Crocodile Hunter, which was my favorite show for 10 years of my life, calls me up and says, we'd like to do a show with you. And then Adrian from Entourage calls me up 2 days later and says, I'd like to work with you. We put them together, and within 6 months of launch, we had a TV show done.
Wow.
That is now going to market, and I'm pretty sure it'll be seen by millions. And that's the start. We've got a world-class documentarian who has literally solved some of the most biggest murders in the world, right? He's been on 20 documentaries around the world. They're doing a documentary. We've got just insane stuff happening because people recognize that this is the idea whose time has come, and that we've got the business structure in place to scale it globally.
Man, that is so cool. I'm so happy to hear that. And when these ideas do start hitting critical mass, it's just going to be so obviously common sense. Yeah. It's like the Larkin Rose thing for me. Like, intuitively, I knew what sovereignty was. I knew what tyranny was. I had a feeling about it. You know what I'm saying? But my brain didn't register it. Right. And I lived in my brain. I didn't live in my heart yet,
Yes.
So as soon as those things click and line up, it's boo, 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 and watch the hell out. You know, I've heard so many people talk about the Great Awakening, and I'm over here like tapping my foot, like, all right, well, I'm ready whenever you guys are.
Exactly.
You know, like an arrogant little child, but but I love this stuff, and I want to work with people. I'm excited about this whole thing. But that is so freaking cool. I'm so excited about that, and that's serendipitous as well. It's pretty funny. So I asked I asked in the chat if anybody had any questions, and there's a couple. Honey asked if you want to share any spiritual teachers or gurus that you've learned from.
Oh, I love that. So everything now is about that for me. Everything is about the teachers that also focus on spirit. Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, one of my favorites. I love the message. And I would say that's one of my favorites. Eckhart Tolle at times has been a major piece of my life. Napoleon Hill, very spiritual, even though everybody looks at that as a business book, it's a spiritual book all the way. He's got a second one that came out after he was dead called Outwitting the Devil. Now this one is fucking mind-blowing. Like at 8 minutes in this film, he talks about the Rothschilds and Rockefeller from the devil's perspective as his greatest enemy, right? Now, the devil supposedly, and I don't believe, by the way, and then like the devil, you know, hey, I might be wrong, but I don't particularly believe that. Anyway, I think there's energetic things, but the fact that this deception, the master of deception is saying that Rockefeller in this book 100 years ago is his greatest adversary, that's crazy.
Yeah. That book, that I'm familiar with that book. I learned about it a few years ago, and it changed the way I view the world tremendously because it is that well written where you're like, dude, is this guy actually fucking talking to the devil right now? Because he's so far ahead of his time. It doesn't seem. Yeah, I mean, that would be the
chills.
Yeah, that would be something fun too. It's not my idea. A friend of mine was like, you should do like a part 2. Like, what would the devil say now? You know? That
exactly. Like, oh man. Isn't it amazing? So that Talbot's The Holographic Universe to me was a mind blower. That this stuff is really scientific, right? That the religious dogma science, it's not science that's going on now. It's more of this religious stuff. It doesn't want this out there. They don't promote this stuff, right? In a sane school system, the first thing we'd learn how to do is think and be self-reliant. That's number one. But in a school system run by mind control, that's not number one. In fact, it's not on the list at all.
Yeah, and it's so funny in that book. He says that what should happen in schools is that the students should teach the teachers. That's what should happen. It should not be that the teachers teach the students like they do. You know, and if you look into like John Taylor Gatto's work, you know, like he wrote that like lampoon in the New York Times when he won New York State Teacher of the Year, saying, you know, the 7 lesson school teacher essay. It is pretty punchy, but he says the 7 subjects that he teaches are like obedience to authority, lack of privacy, class position, inability to hide, you know, like all of these. There's 7 different ones that he specifically outlines in there, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, the school system is there to basically, you know, cattle prod us into submission so that we're good, you know, subservient, like George Carlin would have said, automatons or what have you. So
we follow the rules of the rulers. All right. What rules do they follow? Of course, that's just nuts. All is mind, the Hermetic principles. I've just more gotten into this lately, but this all is mind, and mind is source and spirit is, I think, very powerful. And then Tesla's quote, if you want to change the world, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Like that's my most important, if that's all I knew, and then I actually go into it and feel the vibration rising, that would be enough, I believe. And then the present. I'm actually reading on my computer in Sharpie. I've got all his mind. I've got vibration, present and then rhythm. The rhythm of things, right? The yin and the yang, the up and the down, the good and the bad. Embrace all of it and then learn from all of it and learn to then choose. Now, the word choice, by the way, is almost always misused.
If I had a lighter, I would be flicking it right now. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Love it, buddy. Because the word choice implies that there's an awareness of choice. He made a bad choice. No, he didn't. He didn't have a choice. He made the program come to reality. That's all he did. And so to increase the number of relevant choices that we have in any given context is most important. And what's the most important given context for me is speaking in terms of freedom, which is enlightenment and self-reliance and sovereignty.
Man, I love that. Yeah, you tossed out some great authors there. You mentioned David Hawkins too earlier in the show. I mean, man, such good stuff. This was the type of thing that, I mean, it's so interesting because even in learning, it seems like there are both sort of poles. It's like over here, you learn sort of the limits and what's being imposed upon you. But then over here, we have to learn that we're not the victim too, right? So that's been a big part of what I want to share, with people who are, looking into mysteries and digging deep into whatever you want to call it, alternative history or conspiracy or whatever. It's like, yes, like I'm not trying to discourage anybody, obviously, from uncovering truths, but remember that, we discover these truths in order to implement them, not as victims, not like, oh, look what they did. It's not like some like Monty Burns, is just up there with a joystick, just being like, shit on Owen's shoulder, bird. I don't know. I think that's probably my guardian angel, just keeping me humble. That's what that is. But yeah, I mean, I think, what's really cool about your awareness is that you are actively implementing solutions, and that's where your head is, not in, oh no, look what's being done to us. It's, hey, look what we can do. And the solutions are simple and implementable. And I'm excited. Like my dad, I told him when I started learning about, the government and the school system and these types of things years ago, I was like, man, you need to sell your business and buy a farm. I'm pleased to tell him that he doesn't have to do that. He can just get a permaculture design going, and then he doesn't have to cut the grass anymore. He's going to be stoked. What I mean?
It's so cool. Ian, our lead designer, Dr. Ian Scott, I did a Facebook post about 10, 12 months ago, and I said, I'm looking for people to join me. This is what I want to do. All right. And he was one of the respondees, and I went to his house and I'm like, oh my God, I love this guy. His backyard's 1/10 of an acre. He's got 63 different species plus many more within the different types, like different types of mango, different types of avocado and banana. And he's got like 9 different types of jaboticaba and like 10 different types of dragon fruit, right? So anyway, his backyard is unbelievable. It's just freaking food everywhere. His fences got gack fruit and different types of grapes and passion flower. I mean, everywhere he goes, food. His kids run outside and they're just in heaven. They're just absolutely loving this. And that's the kind of life that everybody can have. 2 other things. I have to, these 2 authors, Terrence McKenna and Alan Watts. Okay. Right. Those are 2 I listen to multiple times a week as well.
I love Alan Watts' voice. I mean, man, that guy could just talk and talk and talk and talk. And I'm like, I'm good, man. I fall right out.
He's got this cadence and it's just a beautiful message.
I love the warmth of those recordings too, like, because you can tell they're done on analog. There's even sometimes like record hiss on there, but it makes me, I love that. I'm such an audio nerd. I had another question from somebody who's a little bit late to the party. Let's see here. Asking what you think about following a biodynamic approach to gardening.
I think biodynamics is fantastic. It's an energy. The whole thing's based on energy. Right? And biodynamics takes it to a level where you put thought into the energetic reaction and energetic connection between everything. So to me, biodynamics in permaculture, there's really no difference. It's just paying attention and observing and interacting, and then making changes based on what we notice. Is this working better or is this working better, right? And when you start with the design principles of permaculture, then you can save time. That's what kind of permaculture does, is it saves time. You can start, by the way, on literally no money. You could go to the store and buy organic fruits and veggies. Hope you don't buy poisonous stuff, right? That's the first thing you got to do. This idea that it's more expensive to buy organic is just wrong. It's way more expensive to buy poisonous foods. It's going to cost you life, literally years of your life and energy in your life. Mm-hmm. So, the seeds. So you can go to the store, you can buy these, and then you could just eat the food and save the seeds. And now just from a $20 grocery store bill, you can create your own garden, right? So it doesn't cost money. It just takes desire. And then here's the best part of that. The act of gardening will heal you. So you don't have to go to the psychologist, psychotherapist. You don't have to do meditation and yoga. You can turn gardening into your meditation and your yoga and your exercise.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of ways to sort of meditate. I'm with you on that, where obviously we want to be present. We want to be able to feel all the feelings in our body. And that was cool when you just took a breath. Maybe we should all do that. Everybody on the live stream, we just take a team breath right now. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, just, hey, like a little reset. Okay, cool. I'm here. Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important to share the moments that we have, because now really is all there is. And by using now this moment, that's how we have to be present to be able to create that better future. And I love what you're talking about too, as far as being out and going into the garden and just tweaking, because that's real science, It's you're going out there and you're touching things and you're like, okay, well, what'll happen if I do this? Yeah. And then you experiment and you adjust, and then it's this whole system too, which is really cool.
I thought it was really cool when you were talking about taking a breath and you put your hand on your heart. Like, right? There's no accidents in that. Like, you start connecting to your heart chakra, your center, your capabilities, and it's just magic what the messages of the body give us.
The body keeps the score. It doesn't lie. And I think that was like a big part of it. Like the heart sees too. That's been a very consistent element of my practice, and awesome. Just every single morning focusing on that particular place. Every day in the morning, I think about somebody that I love, or an experience that brings me joy, as you were talking about earlier on, and I just try to focus on that. And I think whatever it is that we focus on, we're amplifying it
for sure,
with our attention. So if I can start the day off that way, and then I'll do my morning pages. That's what I just write. For a couple of pages. And then I'm in such a much better place than if I just woke up and started looking over Twitter or something. I had to change that habit a couple of years ago.
Yes. You get up and you look keep the phone. What you just said. I think it should be talked about just for a touch more, because waking up and spending the first 5 or 10 minutes feeling good intentionally. Like literally focusing on things that you can be thankful for, things that you can be happy about and excited about, right? And when you start your day that way, it can change your whole day and create a more abundant day every day.
And I think if we can come from that place too, in whatever it is that we're doing, and just remember, take that breath, be present, then it makes doing whatever it is that we're doing so much more fun. It could be this thing that we are like, because I'll make a list and I have things to do. So I'll make a list. I don't want to forget, Right. I'm not that intuitive that I don't ever forget anything. So I do write things down, but I sometimes get swept up in the sort of, the rush to do it. Like, I got to get this done. I got to, it's like, dude, why can't I enjoy getting my oil changed, and just checking out a new podcast while I'm in that position, or just even taking that time to breathe and feel something in my body, or If I need to post something or do this or do that, I don't have to get wrapped up, I guess, what I'm saying, in like this frenetic energy about it.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I've got to do this thing. And it's so important. Actually, I'll share something that kind of a personal thing. I screwed up last week. A friend of mine, I got swept up into that very energy. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing all these things myself. And, I needed help and I didn't know how to ask for it. And I didn't communicate the help. And so I just blew a gasket. It wasn't too bad, but I said something that I was like, man, damn it. And, I let it come out. And then I realized that I did it. And I was like, oh, shit, I was so embarrassed, and all that, because I got swept up into that. It's like, if I would have just waited 5 minutes, and the thought that got me was like, I'm so busy, like this is my ego showing how important it is, I've got to do all this stuff. It's like, no, dude. Life will go on.
Oh, that's so true. I had a learning lesson the other day. So my daughter, I've got a 2-year-old daughter, and she is amazing. And she's also a tyrant, right?
Right.
Which most 2-year-olds are. This little turkey, she doesn't like sleeping. She knows exactly what she wants. If she doesn't get it, she's got this ability to screech in a way that hurts my soul. Like it just is painful. And I'm like, ah. And then I'm thinking, okay, what's the best way to help stop that and transition that behavior? And, I tried different things. Okay, I'll just sit and listen. I'll look and all that. And she's screeching in my face. I'm like, that ain't working. 90 seconds. This guy I was talking to the other day, I don't remember exactly who that was, but whoever that was, thank you so much. He studied this and he said, kids have about a 90-second window. Just let it go for 90 seconds. Just don't pay attention for 90 seconds and you're done. Ever since then, I've been stepping back from it instead of getting emotionally involved. And sometimes I'd get I'd get welled up inside. I'd be like, Sophia, stop, and then I'd raise my voice. And then it's an energetic, violence. Oh, and by the way, Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication. He's got a 3-hour video on YouTube. It's freaking off the charts, right?
Awesome. I have the book, but I didn't know he had a video.
Oh, dude.
I'll check that out.
Yeah. And now every time I communicate, I actually go, I felt a little tight. Was that violent? Most of us communicate in terms of violence and we don't even know it, right? I mean, even the word love is mostly, or at least often used in a violent, in a controlling type of way. Right. And so anyway, so that is so helpful. 90 seconds and never email or communicate pissed off.
Yeah.
Now, and it's on email, it's a lot easier because you're sitting behind a desk, just walk away. Then it's going to change your life.
No, that's great. Yeah. It makes me think of the book Reality Transurfing. He talks about pendulums, which are also, egregores or whatever, but he has so many different examples about energy and, there's a script really that's involved. It's like push comes to shove. We know this, right? Yeah. This escalates to this, escalates to this. He even talks about there being a leaping gesture, just some trickster, just loving the conflict, eating it up and wanting it to go higher.
Yeah.
But if we just disengage from it and are indifferent to it, it's a completely different reaction than fighting against it. You know what I'm saying? And we don't actually endorse or validate the behavior. And I think on a collective scale, it's true too. It's like, this is why I'm not for protesting, I think sit-ins in the 60s worked because it was different and, it was another time. But at this point, like a protest, you're going to go out there and fight what? And then you're going to fight against the cops. They're going to bring a tank out, it just escalates. Yeah. And then windows get broken and all this stuff happens. Dude, no, just don't comply. Just don't do the thing that they're saying to do and don't fall into the honey trap either.
Right.
And one of the things Doug Stanhope said, I thought that was great years ago is if you want to do some protesting, let's just all go to Bank of America and apply for loans we don't get, aren't qualified for with a line down the street. You know what I mean? They'll be so busy, wrapped up, they won't have time to do anything.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. My favorite act of sedition, of revolution, is to grow food. Right? You literally take them out, starting with your mind and then with your physical reality around you, is to stop using the tools of enslavement. Yeah. But yeah, I couldn't agree more, buddy.
That's great. No, but that is great. It's like any sort of tool of leverage, right? That we can keep and stay self-reliant about. Yeah. Obviously, that's us keeping our power physically in the material realm. So I just think what you're doing is so awesome. I think permaculture is so neat. And even when I was working on that tree farm, I would talk about this stuff and they just thought I was a fairy hippie. You know what I mean? They were like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, he looks like a lumberjack, but I'm not so sure.
I love it. A lumberjack with a teddy bear. That's beautiful.
That's exactly right. So I just think it's beautiful. I think it's wonderful. And yeah, I just, before we kind of like wrap up, where can people get started? If it's just me, I'm just a person in my house, I'm a single guy, I have a black thumb, and I just, you know what, I want to get more self-reliant. What can I do in Georgia to kind of get started setting up my own food forest?
Love Georgia is such a great growing zone. So get a design, get a blueprint, which is a custom design. It's a landscape blueprint with all the permaculture principles and all the different types of food growing. That's the first. And then from there, you can DIY it, you can phase it out, or you can collaborate with one of our cooperatives around the world. And then this is where it gets incredibly fun. You can also then become a demonstrator of what freedom looks like, of what health and abundance and joy and incredible ROI. I mean, the ROI of a food forest is going to be any market segment ever. Crypto is now in the short run would crush everything. But in the long term, it's proven that you're going to get X amount of value off of a fruit tree. Take a peach tree, within 7 years, you're going to probably have 500 or 600% ROI, right? That's where else are you going to get that? Right. So then design and install a food forest, either with us, do it on your own, find your local gardener group, find your local permaculturist, million ways to do it. If you want to be in the business of helping people be free. And by the way, this is a very well-positioned and very strategically thought business. My main goal and our company's main goal is to serve the cooperative. The cooperatives are all the gardeners and permaculturalists and any business person that's out there that wants a business that is beneficial on every level. We advocate for a 40% margin. I actually spent $250,000 getting the whole franchise document piece ready. I had a 244-page FDD, a franchise disclosure document, and an 89-page ops manual. And when I got it, I was sick. I threw the whole pile of shit in the trash because every line in these documents represented control and fear and litigious behavior. Now voluntarism is everything. Everything we do. Now we have a 2-page document and it says, it explains we are going to provide this value, which is marketing and business support and design structure and service to your customers and all these things. You are going to be the ones as a co-op owner to go out in the ground and price out the design and then install it for the customer. And you're going to make an average of $5,000, $6,000 per install. And you could scale that where you've got 3 going per week or 10 going per week. It's up to the individual to see how much they want to scale. So it's an incredible business model. And that's why it's probably the fastest growing cooperation model ever, I think. Literally.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's incredible. So I grew up, my grandparents here in Jefferson, right down the road, they had a nursery. And so like my whole family, they grew all kinds of hydrangeas and ferns, all that kind of stuff. And my uncle's he's a agricultural, like a landscape design architecture.
Nice. Yep.
Yeah. So I imagine what the future could hold, and what I believe it very well may, are people who are in that field designing food forests.
Yes.
And these landscaping crews, instead of trimming the bushes around your mailbox, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Installing these like life-giving, automatically food producing, yielding gardens of,
right.
No
maintenance food producers.
That's beautiful. I think it's great. Well, I love what you're doing. Please let me know how I can help. I'm happy to do it in any possible way. Any books on permaculture you would recommend?
Oh, millions. Bill Mollison's permaculture guide and so many more. You go on YouTube or any of those things and you just look up permaculture. I mean, Jeff Lawton's Greening the Deserts of Jordan is fun. Bill Mollison's Trump story talking about free energy is off the charts. Like, it's once you get into it, if you get passionate about learning alternative solutions, alternative meaning real, nature proven solutions, permaculture has all the answers.
Man, that is, I believe you. I believe you. And I have had such a great time chatting. I really appreciate you coming and talking to me today.
Man.
Jim, you are awesome. I'm going to be in touch. And in any way, like I said, more than happy to help you and what you're doing. Your vision is beautiful. And wow, you're a courageous example of a human being. So I appreciate you.
Man, I love you. I love your energy, Owen, and I appreciate you tons. And yeah, anything I can do for you or your audience, please let me know. I'm standing by.
Dude, that's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you.